Folks, welcome to Reseda, California here, and we're joined today by a master musician and even better human being, a guy who's about to take off again, Todd Cochran. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
How are you?
It's an honor to be here, and the worldwide audience tuning in. Keep the comments coming. And Todd, I wanted to start by asking you, this is more when you started to go into rock and roll. Can you talk about how you were able to get the music in your head to get onto the piano, and then most importantly, get it out to the audience? Was it, I guess more to the point, was it a struggle with the people that were running the boards in a live setting to translate the sound in your head to get it out to the live audience?
For me, I've always looked at music as originating as an image in my mind, and then from there I make whatever physical adjustments that are necessary to produce that sound. And so it's almost about, in that sense, it's transmittal. And so there are always different layers of that. The idea, the physical response, and then actually producing the sound. So, as a player, let's forget just the technical part of it. We have the idea, physical response, fingering, body movement, whatever, and then the actual production of the sound. As a player, the objective is to actually bring those three areas together to the point where they disappear. That's it. And so similarly, as far as that reaching an audience, I guess, were you speaking of...
But I'm trying to, there was a lot of cats...
Of sound reinforcement?
I'm just talking about the idea that you have these things, the sound in your head.
Yes.
How it translates out onto your rig, but then in the live context, I'm talking about live playing, not,
live music.
okay,
yes, right.
Especially in a setting with high amplification, in a rock setting.
Right.
Did you struggle with getting hearing back, when you would hear the tapes back, were you satisfied with how it sounded to the audience, and was it the way that it sounded in your head?
I think for the most part I would say yes, and in terms of that's a collaborative experience in terms of you, the artist, the player, the musician is always adjusting their sound, because we really don't even know what our sound is like 10 feet away.
That's right.
100 feet away, 1,000 feet away. We really don't know. So it's why people who are playing all the time, they will always have someone nearby who they trust, got an ear for ultimately what that sound is that you're producing, that stands or sits those distances away, and say, well, what is it? It's just like a violinist has the violin under their neck. They hear one sound, but that's not really what someone 15 feet, 50 feet away hears. So
that's right. And then you're playing for people. You're trying to touch their hearts.
Right.
But
that's always chemistry. That's chemistry.
But were you? I mean, again, we talked a little bit about playing those jazz gigs towards the end when you pivoted out of jazz and you couldn't hear yourself all the time, and the piano was changing its role. Right. But in the were you, when you first were on the stage like Automatic Man or any of these bands, were you did it distract you because early on you were worried about exactly what you were talking about? How do I sound 10 feet away? How do I sound 1,000 feet away? How did you get over that? I mean, was it just through the fact that you trust you had a good engineer? Because for a long time,
Yeah, well, I think it was more about having the right equipment, because the sound wasn't really as much sound reinforcement as it was the sound actually coming out of the amplification that I had itself, and then that in turn was mic'd and sent outward, to the audience. So that was the adjustment, and so we'd always work on the tools, the equipment, to get that sound as balanced as possible. And then when you play, it always goes somewhere else. The control of it, we don't really have full control over anything.
I want you to talk a little bit about Thelonious Monk. You just played a tune of his, I believe, or maybe that was just a free improv. But
Yes, just kind of round the Monk, yes.
Yeah. But your new iteration, your band,
Yes.
with Michael Carvin and a phenomenal bass player as well.
John Leftwich, right. New trio that I have.
Why don't you talk conceptually about what that's about? Because the Monk tune you're playing, but it's not a homage to Monk per se.
No. Basically, what it is taking this wonderful language that he created and contemporizing the specialness of what it is that he created, that he wrote in the context of today. So that's not even reimagining it. It's just placing it in the context of now. So we have there's just a completely.
When you say now, what are the nuances of now?
I think the context would be how people are listening, what people are feeling. I would say people have certain viewpoints about music and what that expression should be, and certainly people come in with feelings about the tradition.
Yes.
Um,
Are you trying to promote the tradition or change or adapt it to the stylings of the time?
Well, it's automatically adapted to the stylings of the time, and when that is done, I think that's a form of activism, because you're relating to an energy that came forth within a particular dynamic which we cannot perfectly recreate. So we take the inspirational aspects of it, the melody, the rhythms, and basic chord structure, and reinvent that within what we understand about the reality that we're existing in now.
Could you play a tune for the audience?
Play a tune?
Play
something. Here we go. See, well, something such as what? What were you?
Well, I mean something from your trio.
Okay. Well, one thing I would like to.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's in the category of spontaneous.
I guess what I was asking for is a monk tune.
Oh, yeah.
That you guys played that speaks to the time.
Yeah, well, we did Bimsha Swing, which is great, and I kind of like tied that into. I just heard pianist Cecil Taylor just passed away, and early in his career, he actually performed and recorded a version of Bimsha Swing. So that kind of put that.
Yeah, I was asking, could you play that tune?
Oh, some Bimsha.
Yeah.
Which is what we played. See. basic melody, and then from there we have all of these other things.
Talking to Todd Cochran here on the Jake Feinberg Show, having a ball. Going back to your days of creating on Prestige, Worlds Around the Sun. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the rhythm section, specifically in Ndugu Chancellor, who left us. You know, when you brought in your compositions, did you allow those cats to just feel it? I mean, how much rehearsal did you even do for that stuff?
Well, actually, the record that I did was really quite something, because Ndugu and I knew each other for a long time, and so when I was 19, I'd written a record for Bobby Hutcherson called Head On.
My favorite.
And Ndugu was the drummer on that. He did not.
Did you write all the tunes on that? I mean, you were at the source. Many Thousands Gone.
Right. And there were a couple of tunes that Bobby Hutcherson wrote on it. But that's where I met Ndugu, and we have recorded on so many things since then. That was a really very special period for all of us. We were kind of transforming into.
I hate the word fusion, but
these other. Yeah. Well, I would say it wasn't even into fusion, but I think we were kind of morphing into our own musical identities, and so there was quite a bit of energy surrounding that, because of course we were taking this highly adventurous pathway, which certainly was inspired by the times. I myself have always been interested in the connections of musical sounds and references, and certainly the emotional things that are consistent throughout, say, the human experience. And that dynamic of experience was particularly, let's say, exaggerated or more profound because of the times that we were living in, which was there, in which was near the peak of the civil rights era. There was identity, legislation,
and a lot of tragedy too. A lot of loss. Very, a lot of murders and assassinations,
we were really looking at the whole country on edge. We were at the precipice of this transformative change, and so it's very, very exciting to be a creative artist at that time. And I think that's an influence of that period is something that never leaves you.
Because you were breaking up a lot of time and form on those albums, I just want you to talk about when you're dealing with cats that are morphing into their. You used the word so eloquently, I can't remember now, but they were your own. You were becoming yourselves.
Yes.
Is that just vibrational, that they can feel that when you're breaking up time and form? The tunes are very complex, so I just wanted to know how you orchestrated that and what you learned about as a leader from those sessions.
Well, I learned all sorts of things. I think one of the most important things for any creative person is to come to an understanding of where they are in their own process, because I think that the first rite of passage is that internal rite of passage, and for me it was to come to terms with, okay, at what point are you a conceptualizer? At what point are your ideas and your originations valid enough for you to conceptualize? And so for me, that took the form of an essay, of a written paper that I started writing when I was in high school, and I continue to write that paper. And I'm going to tell you, like right now, in my 60s, I'm still writing.
Writing
that paper about what it
it.
takes to be a conceptualizer. You see,
What have you learned about that so far that you can definitively talk about?
I think what I can say is that it is not enough. It's not sufficient to be focused, because I think if you focus, you filter out things that you need to be attentive to. And so,
what kinds of things?
Well, all sorts of things. All of the peripheral activity, all of the things that are being animated by this core energy that's occurring in the center. So that's what people tend to do when they say focus. They focus just on that center and that centerpiece, and I think you can get really lost within that. That's a myopic perception, as I understand it now, because I think that place really to be is in that state of awareness, as opposed to focused on one thing. And that awareness will gives you a sense of that other activity that is supporting this thing that we're looking to reveal, this emotion that we're looking to express, why certain thoughts are more relevant than others.
Were you, because you were around the masters like Bobby and Harold Land and all these cats, I mean, was your awareness, I mean, you've written many Yeah, I don't want to leave anybody out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean,
but what I'm getting at is that you're talking about, you've written many iterations of this this paper on conceptualization.
Yes. Right.
But that awareness of the periphery, was that there earlier for you than most because of the fact that you were able to play with the masters?
I think that's something I think I was able to understand it to a greater degree, because I was working with people who were way more advanced than I was in their in understanding their own process, and
potentially their spiritual life is. I mean, spiritually they were way beyond as well.
Absolutely, and certain things cannot just come across in some sort of a verbal summary. And so for me, I've always been a reader. I read all the time, and so that supports a lot of things that I was observing, and a lot of things that, of course, when you're early in your process. I mean, there are things that I came in touch with, and that I didn't understand for 25 years.
Exactly.
But it sat there. It didn't go away.
It was latent. Yeah, it was latent.
Yeah, that's what it is. So it's just like are you the thought, or are you the thinker? Because I think one is more fixed than the other. I think that that your thinking needs to be animated by other elements continually, so it requires you to keep that open mind, to trust, being vulnerable to all sorts of forces. There, I think that's really big. You were going to say something.
No, I actually just was before we covered your trio TC3, but could you play Missing Miles for us, and then we'll get into the.
Oh, Missing Miles is a piece for horn and for French horn and piano, so I wouldn't be able to play that for you.
Well, could you play anything on? Is there anything on that?
I just play something. I'll play some melodies.
Yeah, stretch out. People are tuning in worldwide here. Todd Cochran.
I'll just play something in the moment.
That's right. Be here now. Talk about
right.
this collaboration with Mr. Watt.
Okay, Bob Watt.
And specifically his relationship with Miles Davis.
Well, Bob Watt has been a very close friend of mine for many years, and he's a French hornist. He's French horn, and he was assistant principal French horn of the LA Philharmonic for 37 years. And at a certain point in our friendship, he had, he spoke about his relationship with Miles Davis, and Miles would come to hear him play with the LA Phil.
Miles specifically come here play French horn.
Yeah, and they had horses. They had equestrian horses. They would ride horses together.
Unbelievable.
And anyway, Bob was doing a series about remembrance, and he'd come to me and asked to write a piece about, he told me about his relationship with Miles Davis, and so that piece was called Missing Miles, and so that had one movement to it, and then it kind of expanded into 3 movements, and then it became a record. It became an album. The whole album is not in remembrance of Miles Davis, but that is definitely one of the centerpieces of it, and had a wide range of players on there. Barry Finnerty, great guitarist, did a piece with Bob with 2 guitars and in French horn. Very beautiful rendition of Ravel's Four Lane.
Finnerty was playing. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, really, really, very, very beautiful. Which is an unusual combination of French horn and guitar, and that was really quite beautiful. And then we did things with string quartet, and we did a number of conceptual pieces. I wrote a suite called Laughter, Humor, and Satire, and of that there's also wit and cynicism. Wit and cynicism we didn't do, but we did do the first 3, and so those were kind of putting him in actually as a voyeuristic experience, where he was like coming into this imaginary cafe where people were talking, and he's sitting by himself, and people would laugh, and he would join in the laughter, and then the satirical aspect would be this relationship that he had. That was really, where it was very edgy, and we put together a number of other interesting pieces. We did a couple of transcriptions of Bach as well.
Did you did you ever get a chance to play with Rudolph Johnson?
No.
You remember him though?
Yeah.
Monster. I've been listening to this Chester Thompson album with him. Totally unheralded Bay Area cats. But did you play the B3 ever?
No, I wasn't. I was definitely very interested in organ when I was younger.
Well, I was thinking you being fascinated with the bass pedals and.
Oh yeah, I got into it to a certain degree.
How far did you go with it?
I had a very small organ with 2,
like a Farfisa,
with 2 manuals. No, I had more than that. And then I had organs in my rock and roll days. I had the Yamaha organs, and which were really great, the stage organs with 2 keyboards and the angles.
You didn't have like a Hammond B3?
No, I never did that. And so that's a complete world in and of itself.
We're worlds around the sun, yeah.
Yeah, and you hear that, I mean, that's really, you hear that instrument, that electronic organ sound, you hear it in the black church. I mean, it came, it's rooted in that, and then it took on this other expression, with the trios, and that were as they traveled through the South, and the Chitlin, they called the Chitlin circuit, where the organ, it would play the bass as well as the chordal things, and it's got a trick register on it, which a lot of people don't know. They think that all of that bass is being played with the foot, but there's a trick key that I guess that Hammond had wired or switched there where you can play some of that bass with your left hand. And so everyone thinks that that's
you're a big fan of the Jake Feinberg show because I've been talking to cats about this. It's a misnomer that most cats don't kick pedals.
That are dancing like that. And I mean, I remember going to see Jimmy Smith with my dad when I was, real young and that. And so anyway, the organ with the, of course, guitar and drums. And that was something you could take around. You didn't have to worry about pianos and that, as I was talking.
Well, they'd rent Hearsts and put it in the back of that and drive.
Just any way to get to the gig. And so that's a whole culture and a sound and an energy in and of itself. Very, very deep tradition.
This has been a question,
and I've loved a lot about it. Yeah, I've gleaned a lot from it. The organist, I really liked, of course, Jimmy Smith, but I loved Groove Holmes. Oh boy, he was
a monster.
Oh, very special. Yeah.
And a beautiful human being as well.
Yeah.
I've been asking the cats this question. I just wanted you to talk to the people around the world about what were your intentions originally for getting into music?
Music for me was always present. Because both of my parents were musicians by avocation. They played. My mother was a violinist and a pianist, and my father was a pianist and vocalist. And actually, they met at a music lecture in Chicago where they were living. They went to DuSable High School, and it was a music lecture that occurred on a Sunday afternoon. And that's where they met. And so music has always been central in my life. In fact, I never planned on making music my profession at all. And because it was just always there, I started playing when I was 3 years old. My mother would say that I would sit in my father's lap after dinner at the piano, and while she was cleaning up after dinner, that would be some special time my dad and I would have. And music was always in the house. We went to concerts. There were always recordings. Just the full range. That's something that they
were you playing like? I mean, I know they were kind of in the classical bag, but would you? Would you get into any rock and roll at that time, or
no rock and roll? They never got to rock and roll. But they did get
the jazz.
Serious jazz. So Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Oscar Peterson, Ahmad Jamal. That was it. And so that's really who I listened to. That was my gateway into my personal expression, but always like studying classical music and playing classical repertoire and performing. And I recorded classically 4 times. And so I have to say that I lived in 2 worlds since maybe
3 years old.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, 3 years old, and then I was sick when I was young. I had very bad asthma and very serious allergies that definitely restricted my activity, and so I found myself in reading books and playing music and practicing all the time. That's pretty much it. And then
here's the larger point, because we were talking off air before. You've played the quote-unquote upholstered sewers. You played a lot of the jazz clubs, where you can't necessarily hear yourself. You've also flown in the Learjets and been on top of it all. Yeah. And now you're sort of at a point where you're ready to take off again. But
great. Yeah.
How is your concept about your intentions in music? Have they always stayed the same?
I think that's interesting. You say if my intentions in music stayed the same. I would say that they have my commitment to music has remained the same, but maybe I could rephrase what you've said in a question, which I know is not great.
You're going to feed me a question?
Yeah, which is like this: is your life mini stories, or is it a single story? That's kind of like what you're asking.
You're nailing it. Yeah, you're nailing it.
See, so yes, there are different chapters, and they're opening and closings to chapters, but it's part of this larger story. Now, I think that's a transformative experience in itself, to see like all these variables in the chapter as part of this very, very valid story, because a lot of things that we go through, we do not accept. We don't deal with them. We don't look at them. We push certain things down. We push insecurities. We push things that we've perceived as failures down. We don't look at them straight on. We don't really confront them. We develop personas.
Could you give an example in your career about that?
Have to go of what?
Of what you're just talking about. Like, let's say what you deemed a failure, but it's just a chapter in your book, and it really wasn't a failure.
I think something that was a failure would be something that you've really committed yourself to, and fully prepared and given your heart to, every ounce of energy that you possibly could, and it didn't work. I think that would register as a failure. Something that you did half-heartedly, and you were kind of doing it, and it doesn't work out. You're not successful in that. That's really not an accurate reading on where you are. So you don't know what to do within your development so that you don't repeat that. I think failures come from being unrealistic about your own personal truth, and so I think it really is really important to go in there and just remove those things that are hidden, to deal with the shadow, and to accept that you have something within you that is, that needs to be
dealing with the shadow
put forth. Yes.
Is there a specific example? Did you when you talked about leaving jazz at that time, did you look at that as because you poured your heart and soul, and your intentions were pure, but then did you leave because you thought it had turned into sort of a failed venture?
No, not at all. I thought that like some of the areas, like the sensibilities of jazz, of which I love, and I think that is the core, because I think that's where my deepest love of music lives, because there's a vocabulary that emerges from that blues experience, and the harmonization and rhythm, and that the pathos, the ethos, that experiential thing that resonates with my cultural heritage and the identity that I have grown into. So jazz is central there. So I bring a sensibility that comes from my jazz experience to everything that I do. And I would say the higher point of that is the open mind, and not having a fixation on exactly how something needs to be, how it needs to be realized, and knowing that anything that you do, if it's highly artistic, it's open to multiple interpretations. And so there's going to be a natural ambiguity to what it is that you're putting forth. It's like you go into you go into someone's garden, and they've got roses here that are in full bloom, and then you've got another flower that is just as beautiful. What do they call it? Like a canker bloom.
Absolutely.
You see what I mean? But we might think that the rose is more beautiful because it's got fragrance to it, but the canker bloom is just as beautiful too, and it's a wildflower. You see what I mean? So do we relate to the properties of that wildflower, this thing that's not cultivated, and that inherent, whatever, that dimension of freedom or to it, or do we have this thing that's been nurtured to have a certain type of look, you see, and smell and enhancement. So I mean, those are the things.
It's really beautiful. I mean, it is important to keep a wide view, and could you?
So in that sense, you can bring spontaneity and energy to repetitive
I think you
patterns.
just made up a word, spontaneity.
Yeah, spontaneity
It's not-
I know, isn't that something, right? Thank you.
Ingenuity and spontaneity.
There we go. Yeah. So you can bring spontaneity to repetitive patterns. You see, you can make those adjustments. So there's evolution, there's storytelling within things that may otherwise seem purely repetitive. You see, so there is a natural progression of that. And so all of that, and then we've got all these influences and things. We always talk, about the open mind and all that sort of thing. I think it is pretty difficult to look at.
Well, let's try. This may not be totally analogous, but I mean, you've had this tune that has been sampled now by De La Soul and many other bands called Free Angela. And how does that speak to you in terms of the cyclical nature of rhythm and vibration and message and music?
Well, at the time that I wrote that piece, Free Angela, I was just completely open to just direct influence. There really weren't any filters.
You were totally accessible to your.
That's
to your
right.
Yeah.
And I think as we grow older, we start compartmentalizing things. Because that's just the way the world functions. Unless we've got whatever else going on. And so that's it. So look, I'm from San Francisco. I'm from this civil rights era. I am a part of that cultural revolution, and so I think that way. And I think at that time, the purpose that I think we were all encouraged to absorb was to expand our consciousness. And so as we expand our consciousness, we go into these other areas of empathy and understanding. We get outside of ourselves. And so within that, I think I became an accidental activist. And so I've always been very, very conscious of these things that are cultural, and then they morph into something that is political. I think we're dealing with hyper politicization right now.
Well, this is exactly what
is a defect.
Yeah, no,
okay, yes.
Is Charlie Persip told me that we're just one big civilization now.
Indeed.
You talked about a politicization of culture.
Yes.
But juxtapose that to the idea of being one big civilization with no culture. That's what Persip was kind of saying with full interconnection. Anyway, riff on that.
Well, I can't really, expand on that theory. I just do know that I have seen and read and experienced enough. The music is taking me into enough situations, so many situations, where the sensibility of the music is different. The sensibility of playing classical music is one thing, playing jazz is another, playing rock is another thing. So let's just look at those three areas. And so to do that authentically, you really have to identify with the spirit of the music. And so what is that? We could say that's an emotional language. There are touchstones within that. So you have to be open to identify those things. My grandmother was an evangelist, and I spent a lot of time with her growing up, and she had great influence over our entire family. And so early on, she would be very, very verbal and forward about identifying what was good music and what was not good music, what's sacred music, what's the devil's music. And I think through that, and early on in my life, certain notes, certain emotional things like that, I began to identify that and be able to differentiate that. And so that's something that I carried forward going into these, other areas of music. In terms of leaving playing jazz per se in the purest sense, which is where I found my voice and where, I had the great fortune of playing with master musicians and being under their tutelage. There was a verbal communication that was very enticing to me as well, and there was a simplicity that of the musical form itself took on to support the words, where the words were painting certain colors. And so I kind of like shifted that, because I do have this belief that there's syntax in music. I believe that certain music, great music, I mean for centuries and centuries, would not exist if there had not been the verbalization of the idea before. And so I took this from a reverse position and got into that dynamic of, okay, this is the foreground. How do I create that background that enables that foreground to bloom? And that's pretty much been my pursuit. That keeps me in this state of innocence, because I really don't know everything about what that's going to become. And if the more open that I'm able to be, the more spontaneity I can bring to the creative moment itself.
Like we're doing right now.
That's basically it. You see?
Would you be able to? Was it Head On? Was the Bobby Hutcherson album?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Is there a tune you could play off of that?
That was pretty. Well, Bobby and I did some duets, which was really great. Bobby and I did. This is something I've been interested in creating. I guess it is form of chamber music.
Yeah. Piano
and this. Bobby and I did a piece, piano and vibraphone that still comes back to me. He had such an approach. And in answer to your question, no, I don't have any Head On
in your bag,
in my brain right now.
Well,
but I do have a beautiful
whatever you got in your brain, Todd Cochran.
So where are we? Are we kind of like at our end point of this?
Yeah, we're in the seventh, eighth inning right now.
Are we? Okay, yeah. 7th or 8th inning. Okay. Yeah. Anyone on base? Huh?
Dude, you've been knocking him in all day, man. You talk a little bit about...
That's an apostrophe. That's a hyphen. Huh?
A hyphen.
Right, huh?
So, I want you to talk about how excited you are about doing the work as being a very active, involved father, meeting your wonderful wife, but now at the point you're beginning to ascend and take off again, and talk about how gratifying, what that feeling is like, and if you doubted at some point that it would come back.
Yeah, it's really quite something, because I definitely been on hiatus for about 8 years, and I was a full-time single dad, raising my son, who's now 17 and about to graduate from high school. And
he's a badass player.
Yeah, he's at Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan, and he just finished his senior recital. He's a clarinetist, and really pretty exciting to see his growth.
He's pretty open-minded. It's all music to him too.
Or is he more? He's very bright. He has an academic gift as well as the artistry, but now he's seeing that he's going to have to emphasize, his art if that music is going to go to the next level. So that's really, really great. And I have a wonderful wife and Hasmeek, and Jaden, our son, has the mother that he always wanted, which is really very beautiful, because his birth mother passed away almost two years ago. And so he's had some things to deal with, and during my period of hiatus, I was looking after my mother who had dementia. So that was a 6-year period, and then while I was raising my son. But through that time, I, of course, practiced daily, writing daily. I was able to really look at the music in its purest sense and, work through some things that I needed to work through to get to my back in touch with my own personal truth. Meanwhile, I was in service to these other people who really, really needed me, and it was not possible for me to have a real active career while I was really doing that properly. And so out of that came, I think, like just a gift of a renewed perspective. And now I see this world in a way.
Was it a rebirth in some ways?
I would think so, yes. I mean, I think I just kind of woke up and I said, gee whiz, I can actually do some things now that I wanted to do when I was 19, 20 years old. I can actually do this. And so now there's a visual dimension that has come into it as well. I've been doing short films and things which are kind of exegetical in terms of they are explaining process, but then they're also, giving, a visual representation of the ideas which really are there to express connectivity. Because what I've grown into understanding, really, if I could put it in a phrase, is that there truly is a ring around the world, and we share there is a common dimension of humanity that we share. And that really is the experience that I'm looking to express through the music or anything that I might put forth. I think people see that. Music is what I happen to do, but the message is like really realizing how we can be connected in a way where we can improve the condition of life. There are people who are dealing with really desperate realities.
It's unspeakable.
Being deported. I mean, there's just all sorts of things that need to be repaired and corrected, and that's where my commitment is.
You're healing it through a sort of a multimedia format. Can you talk specifically about give an example of this and where people can find it?
Well, they're going to find it in certainly this the record that I'm doing with my trio. I just love these players. John Leftwich on bass with this just amazing melodic concept, and he plays with a legato pizzicato. And there's just something in there's a language that we create together. And then Michael Carvin, who I've had this long time relationship with. We played together with Bobby Hutcherson. He played on my first solo album.
Was he a mentor to you?
He's that, and he's a very dear friend.
I know he is.
And we speak an emotional language that comes through the music. So that combination of John and myself, and I said, okay, great. Where do we begin? So it came to me to do a record of standards, which is something I've never done before. And we've taken those into a very contemporary setting. Those are the structures, and then we do this freely expressive commentary on those pieces. And so that is conversational, and that's what the audience sees, is us in dialogue with each other. And
there's a lot of pictures of the subway, the train. What's the significance of the train?
The train represents migration. It represents the roots of of blues expression and the origins of jazz as that southern birth migrated north.
Started in New Orleans.
Yes, right there, and then there's the whole social, political, cultural aspect of that. There's the struggle for equanimity, social justice. All of these things are embedded in the experience and at this point, it's become it's representative of this wonderful transformation that we're in the midst of. I'm saying we, the collective we, as a culture and being conscious beings. And so any way that can be expressed.
Terry Walsh.
Oh yeah.
He built the Steinway. He created this.
Well, Terry Walsh was the head technician of the Steinway factory.
And he left us. He left us a year ago.
Yes, he did.
And
right.
he was a dear friend of yours. And
very much so. And he has everything to do with the selection of the piano that I got. From the Steinway factory, and he was really very special. And we had a great connection through that whole selection process of the instrument itself, and we spent time together. And then a year went by, and and this was great. And we'd always get together when we were in New York, and then it came down to birthdays, and we came to find out we were born on the same day, and that's that was very special.
Could you, as we wrap up this live edition on Facebook, could you play an ode to Terry?
To Terry, oh yeah, Terry's a very interesting guy. Okay, let's see, there's something for Terry, huh?
Something for Terry. Todd Cochran, it's always a pleasure to see you as I keep evolving and expanding. I wish you all the best as you continue. I thought you were fantastic, man. Much love to you, brother.
Thank you. You're a brilliant conversationalist.
It's
always interesting.
You never know. It's always a trip on the Jake Feinberg show. We'll be back in a little bit. Take care.
Mm-hmm.